Hello, you're watching World Talks on TVP World. My name is Sascha Fahrbach. Finland's Prime Minister Petteri Orpo has arrived in Beijing for an official visit, with talks expected to focus on bilateral relations, China-EU ties, and major international issues, including Russia's war against Ukraine. His visit comes as Canada is also moving to strengthen engagement with China, while other European leaders, including France's Emmanuel Macron, have already been to Beijing, and visits by the UK's Keir Starmer and Germany's Friedrich Merz are reportedly being prepared. Now, this growing diplomatic traffic to China raises an important question. Are Western allies recalibrating their China policy, and what impact will that have? We'll now discuss it all further, and we're joined by Sana Hashmi, Fellow, Taiwan Asia Exchange Foundation. Good to have you on TVP World. Welcome.
Thank you.
So, I want to begin with the visit, this ongoing few days. Finland's Prime Minister, how realistic are the expectations that this will be about geopolitics, any breakthroughs, economic? He's bringing with him a large business delegation, but what kind of impact will that visit have?
I think it's important, but then it's not as important as we are putting that much importance on it. First of all, I think one of the major talking points that we are seeing, specifically whenever there's a European leader visiting China, that they're going with a large business delegation. So the major objective is to achieve their economic objectives in this hugely altering global order, and specifically when there is less trust in the US. So I think the idea behind all these visits, including the current visit by this Finnish Prime Minister, is that we cannot just have uncomfortable ties with both the US as well as China. And so from that perspective, it makes a lot of sense to take a huge economic delegation to China. And also apart from that, this is about how they're losing this trust in Western partnership to counter China, as well as at the same time how to protect their economic interests, where US is being seen as more and more less reliable, not a partner of the West and not a partner of the European countries. So I think in that context, China is becoming much more reliable than the US, specifically in the current situation when there is this conflict between NATO versus NATO. This is what we are seeing. The US is now targeting Greenland. So I don't think there's a lot of trust in the US. So it's a direct outcome of how this relationship in the West is turning out to be.
Mm-hmm. I want to dig into that a little bit more. This is actually, as we already mentioned, a flurry of visits just a few weeks ago. Another EU leader was there, I believe, from Ireland, also visiting Beijing. Nevertheless, smaller countries as well as the larger ones. Macron of France also there. We have Keir Starmer and the German Chancellor in the near future as well. You said it's about economics, but what is let's say, the success? What does success look like after a visit like the Prime Minister of Finland's visit there in China?
I don't see it as a transformative visit, and I don't think the idea is to transform individual European countries' relationship with China. And of course, if we also look at the broader EU-China relationship, that is not really going to help in the broader context. But from Chinese perspective, I think when we look at the objectives of the European countries, is primarily economic. But from China's perspective, it's how China is using this economic leverage to gain political gains. And the political gain for China here is how to penetrate back into the European Union, because we have seen in the past several years how the China 14+1 is something that perhaps China didn't expect it to be. So a number of European countries kind of stopped engaging with China, particularly Central Eastern European countries. So perhaps this flurry of visit is just a way to get back to the European region. And I think US is absolutely giving China a chance here. But I feel from the European perspective, it's most about, we have to look at from three primary objectives. First, that US is not as reliable. Second, there is an economic imperative to engage China. And these countries, China is one of the largest trading partners with trade imbalance, and these countries are dealing with a lot of trade imbalances. So I feel China, of course, economic imperative there, then less trust in the US, but then also when this competition is going on, we also have to take into consideration the Russian invasion of Ukraine. So the biggest threat for a lot of European countries is Russia and not China. So I feel this mismatch of interest and mismatch of concern is something that is making it easier for a number of European leaders to go and perhaps try to manage, restore ties with China here.
Well, you mentioned this economic interest, which, I mean, there's interest on both sides, really. I mean, this is still a huge market for the European Union, for China, but also if we include the United States. I want to also expand a bit further. I mean, there has also been recent visit by the Canadian Prime Minister, also meeting Xi Jinping, looking at also making that relationship closer. That has drawn the ire of President Donald Trump. So what does that tell us also? I mean, Canada recently also in Davos, the Prime Minister saying some very, let's say, more harsher words against a certain president. But nevertheless, I want to throw Canada in there. Where does that calibrate everything in the future?
I think it's just a lot of countries are realizing, including Canada, European countries, are just too risky to have uncomfortable ties with China. And I think the US is the reason behind it. There are a lot of countries that have just stopped talking about de-risking, disengaging with China. So I think that they have reached a scenario where they have to engage China. So I don't think from China's perspective it's anything to do with economics. And we have seen that how China has used economic coercion to achieve its objectives. And I think this is what is happening at the moment, be it Canada, be European countries. So I feel that what is Beijing's approach is to advance towards the European countries, towards Canada, where US is not really playing a huge role. And I think, in my perspective, what China is doing is just filling the vacuum that has been left by the United States, specifically after the national security strategy, when the US declared that its focus is going to be primarily on Western Hemisphere. So what is going to happen to its US relationship with the European countries, the NATO alliance, and the North American unity, and the Indo-Pacific? So I think China is just taking advantage of that aspect. So wherever there is no US, we are seeing more and more China, and countries just have to either be more aligned towards the US or towards China. I don't think there is any in between that, specifically in the current situation. So who's going to take the leadership? We don't really have a responsible or an alternative as of now. So I feel China is just taking advantage of what is being left behind by the United States.
And this is an interesting one, because not that long ago, I mean, it always seems to be that Europe can't really agree on what its China policy is, right? If we look at the European Commission, if we look at different states, Germany, France, also Poland, there seems to be a dissonance. Are we moving, do you think, because you've addressed this before about what you've said, the United States not as reliable, do we see, let's say, the beginnings of a unified policy from the Europeans towards China, or is that still too early?
I don't really see a unified policy towards China. And I think, if I may say, it is becoming more and more incoherent and becoming more and more divided on China. And I'll give you an example. The EU leadership is right now in India, attending India's Republic Day parade, being special guest on India's Republic Day. But then on the other hand, what we are seeing that a lot of European leaders, individual countries, are moving towards China as well. So it's just not that they're moving towards China, they're also looking towards India. We saw a flurry of visits from the European leaders to India as well. So I think the focus is on the Indo-Pacific, and perhaps China is also a part of that policy. So earlier, what we saw a couple of years ago during Trump 1.0 and Biden administration, that there was this focus on the Indo-Pacific from the European side as well. But China wasn't really an important part of it in terms of cooperation. China was primarily seen as a threat. But now I think that view is being shifted, and I think it's out of compulsion. So now China is being an important part in terms of engagement. So I think reaching out to China, reaching out to India and other countries in the Indo-Pacific is just a part of broader EU Indo-Pacific policy. But if you ask me if European countries are going to if EU is going to have a unified China policy, I don't really see it happening anytime soon.
All right, I do want to ask another China-focused question. I mean, there are various media outlets reporting this, including the Wall Street Journal, that apparently there's been a very high-level accusation of a senior, I think probably the most senior commander and general of the Chinese military, who apparently has been passing off nuclear secrets to the United States. Now, this is still developing, but I'm just curious how you see this impact relationships, how this impacts spheres of influence within China, and also what that means with relations between the Pacific states and also Europe.
I think that's a very serious accusation, and I think this is reported by Wall Street Journal, so we haven't really seen any credible evidence towards that. But of course, it shows us that how Xi Jinping is trying to annihilate anyone who is a threat to his consolidation of power. So, as in, he is the powerful man, and he is removing everyone who could be on the basis of just corruption, discipline. So, we do not really know what is behind these allegations, these accusations, these purges. So, I think purges have been always common in China, but then this intensity, the frequency of it tells us that there is instability despite this modernization, despite the achievement that China have been projecting in terms of modernization, in terms of defense of the country. But despite that, there is a lot of instability. And what is happening is Xi Jinping, the only one who's going to handle the entire country, all the military sections. So I feel that this is something that tells us that there is something problematic that is deep within the Politburo, within the Chinese Communist Party. How it is going to shape China's relationship and China's dynamics in the region, we don't know as of now. What we have seen that Xi Jinping has been able to consolidate power, and whatever is happening within China, there is a lot of opacity. So I think all these Western reports that are coming out, we do not really have any credible evidence proving that. I don't think it is going to impact foreign policy and how China is going to shape its engagement within the Indo-Pacific region. We do not really have any evidence pointing towards its decrease in influence within the region, because what we have seen is just Xi Jinping's China, and in the past over a decade, this has become the term that China is just not China, it is Xi Jinping's China. This is one-man country, and whatever he decides, whatever is going to happen in China is on the basis of his policies.
All right, so lots to discuss there in terms of also very much how the European Union deals with China and also further afield. Thanks so much for all those insights today. Really appreciate your time. Sana Hashmi from the Taiwan Asia Exchange Foundation. Thank you. And thank you for watching World Talks. We'll stay right here on TVP World for more news and commentary. Goodbye.